Hello and welcome to another in our threat update series. Today, joining me is one of our top incident responders, Ryan O'Boyle. Ryan's going to tell us about what he's seeing on the front lines out there in the field. Ryan, I know that some of the biggest stuff in the news that we're seeing right now is around ransomware, Ryuk. We have, I believe there's even an article I read this morning about a hacking group offering $1 million reward, basically, for people to come join their ranks. What are you seeing on the ransomware front out in the field?
Kilian, there's definitely been a spike over the past few weeks, and I would say you could even think back the past couple months as well. And we've been seeing it really all over the world, not just here in the U.S., seeing it in Europe and EMEA. And it's not just one ransomware variant. We've been seeing a couple different types out there as well. So I think it's important when we're talking about threat detection and how to identify these potential events to have multiple layers of security around it. Things like signature detection alone aren't just going to pick all of these different variants up. It's important to have some behavioral detections too. So that's what we've been seeing as pretty successful over the past few weeks.
So in terms of when you're brought in for an investigation, typically, maybe you'll start with ransomware. What other factors do you look for during that? So either before the potential infection date or after the potential infection date when you're brought into a customer?
Well, that's actually a great point that you brought up because a lot of times we get brought in because of ransomware, right? That's the very noticeable aspect, and obviously that's somewhat intentional. But it's been interesting to see what's been happening prior to the ransomware in a lot of these investigations. We've actually had a couple scenarios where ransomware was the end game, right? Ultimately, that's why we came in. But when we looked several days prior, we started seeing things like atypical data access, full share drives being dumped and exported through extracted files and RAR files. So it's not always just the ransomware component. I think these cyber criminals are also after data as well. And a lot of times when we get hit by ransomware, we're so focused on the remediation and the containment efforts coming out of that we lose sight of, the 24 or the 48 or the 72 hours prior to the ransomware, which is often really when we're seeing more of this suspicious activity happening. So that's what we've been focusing on, not only just the remediation for the ransomware, but what happened prior to that. How did they get in? Can we figure out their path to that point?
Thanks, Ryan. In terms of how they're getting in, are you seeing any spikes in any particular vectors lately?
Phishing is definitely getting up there again. We've been seeing a lot of phishing attempts and speaking with a lot of organizations. They're having a lot of things that are getting blocked, which is great, but we're also seeing a lot of incidents where phishing is successful, unfortunately. So I would say that's probably the biggest vector right now.
And just I touched on it on the intro, but we talked about the recruitment drive. Do you think that's affecting it? Some of these ransomware as a service people kind of going out there. Do you think that's a factor in the increase that we're seeing?
Sure thing. I think money's a huge motivator here. I think a lot of this is cyber criminal activity, and money's always a big driver. It makes sense. Not only are they looking to get money from data that's stolen from organizations, right? Potentially extortion, exploitation on the internet, but then at the same time, if they can also get a ransom from some sort of ransomware attack as a secondary payment from that particular event, why not? So I think money's a huge driver here.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Ryan. I hope our audience finds this informative and interesting. Please join us again for another of our threat update series. Thank you and take care.
Thanks,